Hey everybody, you asked for it, so I brought it. Today we're going to go over how to successfully conduct a platoon attack on a facility in an urban environment. I'm going to go over everything from planning and setup to debrief and follow-on actions, and everything in between. So buckle up and let's get into this. First and foremost, we need to talk about phase lines, building numbers, objectives, and overall being able to paint a picture on the battlefield on paper prior to the operation. Understand that the better the picture is painted, the better it will be to communicate in the chaos. Communicating clearly where your guys are and where you might need to support, reinforce, or withdraw is crucial when in the thick of it. What I mean by that is, instead of trying to call over the radio that you need fire support on the second-story building in front of you so that you can move to the one-story building to the left of the two-story building, it's best to just be all on the same page of, hey, I'm at phase line white in building A, and I need you to fire on building B so that we can move to assault building C. See how clear that is? Mount is just an extremely confusing environment if you're trying to coordinate your guys during the attack without having already established building numbers and phase lines during the mission brief. Make sure that all your squad leaders and team leaders fully understand the environment and don't just gaff this off during the planning phase. I've seen plenty of botched urban attacks, all because guys couldn't coordinate properly to their adjacent squads during crucial moments that led to disaster. Next point of concern in your planning process would be your enemy sit rep. Many times when you're performing mount, you will have time to analyze your enemy and develop a hasty plan of attack. When given the chance, this is where your salute report will come in. Size. How large of a force am I dealing with? Obviously, if you're a platoon going up against a company, you're extremely out of your depth and not going to want to poke that bear, unless you have a strong equalizer up your sleeve like air or armor support. In combat, more guns in the fight will always yield a stronger advantage. Activity. Now that you have a general idea of how large your enemy is, you need to figure out your enemy's purpose. Are they on the attack? Are they defending? Are they going to retreat? Or something else? You can figure this out depending on your enemy's posture. If they have sandbags, blockades, or other fortifications, you could imagine that they're going to defend. Unless they're understrength and lacking combatants at these fortified positions, then in that case they might want to retreat, or they might be in a more aggressive posture, possibly awaiting a near imminent attack. It's always wise to take a brief pause in the fight to be aware of your enemy's actions and posture so you can better gauge how to approach the next firefight or objective. Location. Location is pretty obvious during a firefight, but during lulls in the battle it's not always as clear. Many times your enemy will start to maneuver behind your position in an urban environment. I mean, just think about it. The massive amount of cover and concealment you have at your disposal, obviously your enemy will take any advantage that they can, and if you don't keep a strong fortified line with proper coordination, then the enemy will definitely get behind your lines, and it will be a really bad day for you and your surrounding units when you have to go back and clear the same buildings that you have already cleared. So unless you want to be a dog chasing its tail, then always be aware of your enemy's location as much as possible and maintain a hard-bodied posture. Unit. Now when I talk about unit, I don't mean, oh bro, is that 3-5? Nah, what I mean is, are they mechanized, are they infantry, etc. Something obvious to point out is that the type of unit you will encounter will have its own strengths and weaknesses that you will either like to avoid or exploit. This is why it's never a bad idea to have a special little tactic up your sleeve for special occasions. Time. Time is a pretty simple concept, just when was the last time you saw your enemy? If it's been about 5 minutes, then it's probably safe to say you have a general idea of where they are. But if it's been a decent amount of time, then you want to consider that your enemy is either displaced or maneuvering to assault your position. Or like I stated earlier, they might be trying to maneuver around the back of your position. Equipment. Equipment is pretty basic. It's what weapons and munitions does your adversary have? Simple as that. Now that you've established a good picture of your enemy, you want to consider bringing some toys to the fight that will give you a leg up. With equipment, you want to think a large array of gear that most don't consider, such as minimum ammo required. This will really depend on how fast you can get ammo resupply, how large the assault will be, and knowing your team and how well trained they are. Next, specific ammo calibers for supporting assets. That's your snipers, your designated marksmen, your machine gunners, etc. Obviously, when you bring different firearms with different capabilities and purposes, you're going to need more specific types of ammo. Next, explosives. Pretty easy concept. Grenades, Molotovs, shape charges, or anything else that you can get your hands on. I actually did see one guy pack a soda can full of C4 and he made a little grenade that way. I'm not recommending that you make those, but I'm just saying, think outside the box when it comes to explosives. You never know what you can have at your disposal that will be useful later on. Next, breaching tools. Another simple concept: sledgehammers, crowbars, bolt cutters, or even power tools like saws or drills. Just understand that saws and drills make a lot of noise and might give away your position. Then again, it is the middle of combat, so, shooter's preference on that one. Next, ladders. You have either rope ladders or collapsible. I haven't really seen anything else besides those two, so that's pretty much your only options. But again, if you think of something better, go for it. If you're going into a town or a city with multi-story buildings, you're always going to want to clear it from top to bottom. So if you have the capability to bring a ladder with you, then I highly recommend it. Never forget that it's harder to throw a grenade upstairs rather than downstairs. Also, never throw a grenade upstairs. It's going to be a really bad day when a grenade turns into a boomerang and comes back down the stairs. And finally, radios. You definitely want to have radios with you, but understand that the enemy can and will be able to tap into your transmissions, so you have to be cautious and only use them when necessary. Finally, as an overall statement of equipment, understand that everything you bring to the fight will have to be carried, and you don't want to weigh down your guys so much that they can't effectively stay in the fight. After finalizing your gear list, you'll want to consider your platoon's layout if it isn't already established, or if you're adding new assets to your operations. When setting up your squad or fire teams, you want to think, who should get what? And what I mean by that is, what squad should get what asset, like special weapons or enablers like EOD and Crash Fire Rescue. We've talked about this before, and generally you're going to have only 3 squads per platoon, especially if you're under strength. You'll have an assault squad, a support squad, and a security squad. Understand that your assault squad will be making the initial push onto and through the objective. So you probably don't want to put any of your assets or enablers in your assault squad unless they are required for a specific duty, like performing a breach. This means if you have any dog handlers, interpreters, corpsmen, or any other key players, then you definitely don't want them going first. Your support squad will be just that, the support. This means that if you need more dudes to hold down on isolating the objective, then you'll throw them into security. Or if you need more dudes to make the initial breach of the objective because it's too big for a simple squad to clear, then you always have to utilize your support squad and throw those guys in there. A support squad leader should never be afraid to break up his squad, but he should always make sure that his fire team leaders are always accountable of their guys. If assault or security receives members from the support, then it also falls on those squad leaders and fire team leaders to pay attention and not leave their new extra members behind. You'd think that this is pretty self-explanatory, but you'd be surprised on how much it actually happens. Since the concept of a support squad is pretty free-flowing, this is where I recommend you put your corpsman so that he can bounce around wherever he's needed without taking a gun out of the fight somewhere else. The security squad will be focused on isolating the objective or cordoning off an avenue of approach so that your enemy can't effectively reinforce or flee the objective. Security is pretty much your guardian angel so that your assault squad can do their job without excessive interference from the enemy. This is where you most likely want to have your supporting assets like machine guns or automatic riflemen be attached so that you can keep continuous suppression on the objective during the assault. When planning an assault, you'll usually hear guys always brief a support by fire hill or a key piece of terrain. Support by fire is typically the job of your security element because you're isolating the objective, utilizing that key piece of terrain to do so. Like I said, this is where you're going to want to put your support assets like machine guns, automatic riflemen, grenadiers, or even snipers if you have that wild card in your back pocket. Pretty much, once the fight kicks off, support by fire hill is going to be suppression central, just laying down hate on the objective. High elevation and a solid view of the objective is all you're going to need to accomplish the task, but make sure that it is an offset to your assault element so that you're avoiding any blue on blue fire. This is a lot of where people talk about geometries of fire come in and maneuver elements going in between those geometries of fire. For mount, all you pretty much have to work with are multi-story buildings and rooftops when considering a support by fire position or a key piece of terrain. Definitely when you're planning, you're always going to want to scope out and utilize a key piece of terrain in your assault if possible. With that being said, that wraps up our planning and setup phase. Now that we've gotten some planning considerations out of the way, I'll go over with you how this will look like in practice. Understand that a platoon can only successfully clear one objective at a time, and this is where your Rig C comes in. Rig C just stands for Recon, Isolate, gain a foothold, secure, and consolidate. Recon, pretty simple. Get eyes on the objective, utilizing your key piece of terrain, and set up your security element. While setting up your overwatch, you will have your assault move towards the objective and set up in a cold pause in preparation for the breach that will most likely have your support following in suit if they haven't already been tasked out to help with security. Once in place, you're ready to kick off this shindig. Support by fire will open up on the objective, lobbing rounds through all the windows and doorways to effectively suppress the enemy and hopefully draw attention to allow the assault team to make the breach without interference. This is where your assault element will gain entry on a less defended area of the objective. Could be a window, could be a doorway, or you could just make your own entrance. All you're doing is making entry so that you can begin your clearing process, so sky's the limit. There's actually a funny story about a mortarman in Fallujah who put his 60s tube on trigger fire, set the base plate up against the wall across the street, and fired it to try and make a breach in the building so the assault team could enter. Well, it turns out that he just ended up leveling the building instead. During the clearing of the objective, the support by fire will shift their fires away from wherever the assault element is getting close until they eventually cut fires altogether and let the assault team work their magic to finish the job. The way that the security team knows when to shift or cut fires comes from the assault utilizing a specific signal plan, like throwing up foxtails or glow belts into the windows and doors so that it signals to the security element that this is where the assault squad is. You could also utilize radios for this task, but again, proceed with caution. After fires are cut on the objective, it will be on the security element to maintain the isolation and not allow the enemy to reinforce or disperse from the objective. Just because your fires are cut doesn't mean you still don't have a job to do. After you've fully cleared the objective, it will be on the assault element to notify the security that the building is clear and that they are good to pick up and move onto the objective. You could use whatever signal plan you want to accomplish this. I've seen everything from chem-light buzzsaws to air panels, so again, sky's the limit. Whatever works for you and your team is good enough. During the consolidation phase, you're going to want to assess and treat casualties, get a head count, figure out what equipment needs to be resupplied, and set up a defense all at the same time. Usually after short victories like this, the enemy will try an aggressive counterattack to catch you off guard. It's always good tactics as a fire team leader to place your guys in a strong defensive posture while the squad leaders and platoon sergeants get a head count and handle resupply and debrief. In conclusion, after finally securing the objective, the fight is still not over. After you have accomplished your rig C process, you're essentially going to have to rinse and repeat the same steps over and over till you have successfully secured the city. This may seem like a simple, cut and dry strategy, but understand that combat is very dynamic. Your adversary is a living and thinking being who has the same goals as you. So you always have to be ready to adapt to the tempo of the environment and take every interaction with your enemy as a learning experience. Smart tactics and strong small unit leaders are going to make your conduct of a platoon attack that much easier in an urban environment. With that being said, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching. I'll see you all in the next one.